Now, I know this is rather technical, but, cigar lovers for leisure, there's really advantages for you in addressing this type of debates and topics. And I'll come to that in a moment. Another advantage of testing blind within a panel is consistency. Consistent results. Why? Not because panelists influence one another as they test, that is a bias to avoid, but it's rather because normally panelists are trained to categorize and search for specific flavors or combinations of flavors. This is because there is a shared language that is used within a panel. And on top of that, there is this element of focus. And that is different from what you do as a leisure smoker. As a leisure smoker, or as a leisure reviewer, I would call it like that, you might just try to find words that support or justify what you like or don't like in the cigar that you are testing. Or you might say, I know that this cigar is made with tobacco X, and this is why I am sensing aroma Y or aroma Y and Z. And when doing this, of course, there's no point in testing blind. So don't worry, you don't need to test blind. There are also blind tastings that are for leisure, of course, and that can be very interesting too. I think it's important to understand the purpose of what we're doing. Now, the other interesting point is that when it comes to guessing country or region of origin, or even a specific leaf within the blend, testing blind within a panel doesn't provide more accuracy. Many experts do not test blind for this reason, actually, because it's very hard to identify the country of origin of the tobacco, especially when you talk about blends and not puros. So you're not talking about cigars that are made with tobacco coming from the same country. And that's why they need to have more information on the cigar to make some sense or compare the blend to the rest of the blends within a line or within the brand. And for the same reason, importers and distributors might decide not to test blind because they need to also assess the quality of a cigar based on characteristics that are normally not part of a typical blind descriptive test. Alban Cordier is one of our panelists at Cigar Sense, and he's also part of the tasting panel of L'Amateur de Cigar. He stated this.
Actually, for the amateur de cigar, we don't do blind test. And maybe because of my approach of the cigar, I prefer blind testing because I'm more about sensations than memory. For me, when I test cigars, it's different because when we do it for the cigaroscope, we have different origins. But when we do it for the Havanoscope, we have only puros from Cuba, and we personally, I smoke a lot of Cuban cigars, so I know them very well. So I can compare with what I thought it would have been, and not only about what it is right now. And so that's why I prefer smoking in a blind test situation. And I agree with you when you speak about biases. So for me, it's the right way to do. Don't change anything.
One of the objections when it is about testing blind is that when you see the wrapper, then you can fall into the predictive confirmation bias trap very easily. And if you want to know more about what the predictive confirmation bias is, please check out the references in this podcast episode. And basically, it is when you have expectations, and you make sure that you meet those expectations. So you let your brain talk you into, so this cigar has this wrapper, and so this is gonna taste like this. I know it because I've smoked other cigars with that wrapper. Not necessarily that cigar. Now you're tasting blind, so you don't know. So that's what happens. In order to counter this problem, Within the panel, we recently discussed about trying to use colored light bulbs from the moment in which we choose the cigar from the bag containing the batch to the moment in which we complete our review. And we're noting something interesting. The colored light doesn't fully mask the color of the wrapper, but it helps us, again, not so much in not seeing exactly what the wrapper color is, but especially in focusing on the fact that we should not be trapped into the predictive confirmation bias as we start our analysis and focus on it. So that's actually a double benefit that we have from testing with colored light bulbs. But there are alternatives to the colored light bulbs. And listen to Zsolt Aranyos, another panelist at Cigar Sense.
I tried to use a sunglass, and it was a different experience. It works for me. So maybe can try. And everybody has a sunglass at home.
And so, because repeatability of the environment in which we test at home is also important, this is an interesting point. And the fact that anybody has sunglasses at home definitely helps. It's easier to find a pair of sunglasses than a colored light bulb. Reinhard Pohorec also shared with us.
It's more to realize for yourself or to recalibrate that solely by a gustatory and olfactory evaluation, you can, in a rather precise way, try to make a decent analysis. And if you reconfirm that for yourself, then I believe you have another reassurance, or it's easier for you when you are in the situation of you see the color of the wrapper, specifically think of getting rid of the bias, even though it's already there. And I know that's a very hard thing to do, but I firmly believe that if we as analytical tasters and panelists are more aware of the biases and how we can try to eliminate them, at least to a certain point, then it becomes easier, even though there is a visual impact, to put it aside and remember that you are very well capable of clearly differentiating aromatic and taste profiles without the visual bias. So bring that to your memory, replicate the process, replicate the analytical component, and say, yes, there is a visual bias, but I am now capable of proactively putting that aside or pushing it aside and refocusing just on the other sensory triggers that I'm truly perceiving.
Basically, in the end, again, it's all about being aware that what we see or touch may not lead us on the right path, and we may incorrectly predict the outcome of the test. This is all about it. And when using the sunglasses, the red light bulb, it is about the masking of what we see, but most importantly, it is about reminding us of the biases that we need to avoid. And this connects to the priming guidelines before the tasting. As a panel, we have guidelines that we need to apply, not only in organizing the environment that needs to be repeatable, where we test every time, but also we need to follow a certain, call it ritual, every time before we start the smoking experience, the blind smoking experience. And all of this practice, all of these rituals have the function of reminding us we're human beings. It is very normal to be biased just because we're human beings. What we're doing is to focus on avoiding as many biases as possible. That's all.